This is Cast of Wonders, the fiction podcast for young adults featuring stories of the fantastic. Episode 142 for October 19th, 2014. This week's installment in our annual horror story collection, The End of the World, is Marrow by Mav Sky. Mav believes scarecrows have souls. They're rebels on poles waiting their time to rise up as one and take over the world. In her spare time, Mav writes scary stories up in the attic of her 100-year-old home. The stories are usually for adults, because adults like to be scared too, but this tale isn't written for adults. This one is just for you, dear listener, and especially for Thor, Moses, and Helena. Mav is the author of Supergirls, The Undistilled Sky, and a forthcoming horror novel, Wanted, Single Rose. You can find her online at her website, mavsky.com, or on Twitter, which we'll link for you in the show notes. The story is read for you at special request from Mav by our very own artist and producer, Barry J. Northern. Grab your trick-or-treat bags, everyone. The time has come.
Marrow by Mav Sky. I have eyes but do not see. I have ears but do not hear. I have a nose but cannot smell. My mouth wears a stitched frown. And if I get close, I suck bones out your crown. What am I? A gaggle of teens stalk sugar on All Hallows Eve. It's a beaut of a night, and we've got ourselves a whole crowd of ghouls. Why, there's Frankenstein and vampire, werewolf and gorilla, also Kitty, witch, and Dorothy, carrying a live Toto in a basket. Toto yaps and all the kids laugh. They're high on sugar as the moon is full. Werewolf howls and the girls giggle. They're carrying pillowcases overflowing with candy, pitching rocks at Mr. and Mrs. Van Dyke's cornfield. The cornstalks are picked clean as bones, and the dry, leathery sound they make when the wind blows is eerie enough to scare the nuts off a squirrel. Up high on a pole, erect in the moonlight, the tall man gapes. The scarecrow's head is a stuffed old potato bag cinched at the neck. Mrs. Van Dyke sewed in coal buttons for its eyes and scissored slits for its nose. Mrs. Van Dyke swears up and down she'd stitched in a frown to scare the crows, but its mouth hangs open as if screaming to the world. A former farm worker's straw hat sits on top at angle, and for the life of Mr. Van Dyke he can't figure out why it doesn't fly off. Tall man wears Mr. Van Dyke's old flannel and blood-stained pair of butchering overalls. Sticks and cornstalks jut from the sleeves and pant bottoms, and just this year the Van Dyke's adult children had the idea to tie a fancy tomahawk to one of its flannel sleeves, and boy howdy, it scares more than just the crows away. But not tonight. No, boys and girls, not tonight. Nothing can scare gorilla or vampire, so they huck rocks and tootsie rolls at Tall Man, trying to impress the girls. Every time one strikes, Dorothy screeches, "There's no place like home," and Toto barks. Witch hides behind Frankenstein, cackling with every toss. Kitty is thinking of ways to keep them walking to her house, her safe, warm house with hot cocoa and a wide-screen TV, and best of all, no freaky scarecrow with an axe. She hopes her new friends will stay for a while, and they can watch Pumpkinhead and carve jack-o'-lanterns. She can tell Dorothy wants to come over, but Witch has been avoiding her since they turned down Old Joe Road. Witch bends and hunts beside the road. When she finds a smooth black stone, she lifts it into the air, cheering as if she'd won a trophy. "It's a moonstone," she bellows, and Werewolf howls. She swings her arm like a pitcher, aims it for Tall Man's hat, and off the moonstone flies above the sea of cornstalks. It hits, on target, the straw hat shifts, and the guys go wild. Witch screeches and pumps her fist, then bows for her male audience. She gives a snide look to Kitty, and Kitty wrings her hands, glancing behind them on the long deserted road. Witch watches Kitty a moment. Tonight, with the full moon and a whispery cornfield asking for a beating, Witch would rather hang out with the boys and cause a ruckus. She'd been the single female in the group the longest. Kitty and Dorothy were nice, but what scaredy cats. She says to Kitty, "What you looking down old Joe Road for? There ain't nothing down there except those pumpkins we smashed at the Phillips." Frankenstein burst out laughing. "That was your idea, not mine. If they knock on my door tomorrow, I'm blaming you, Dorothy and Kitty." The guys give each other high fives. Dorothy and Kitty find each other's hands. Now, at this point of the story, I'll say on record that Dorothy and Kitty hadn't participated in the great pumpkin bash at the Phillips farm earlier on. No doubt the Phillips children will be in tears tomorrow morning, and Mr. Phillips will be looking to find the culprits. I will also have to go on record to tell you, much to Dorothy's dismay, that it was Toto who gnawed out the teeth of those jack-o'-lantern smiles, and poor Dorothy is worried sick that Toto's actions will be enough to incriminate her. So there's good reason Dorothy and Kitty hold hands and shiver in the breeze. Every time the wind shifts the stalks, the girls yelp, and then it's as if a coyote pack is set off. Vampire and Frankenstein whoop and holler, leaping around. Beasts of the night they are. Gorilla grunts and scratches beneath his arms, and Werewolf yowls like a rabid dog. After a while, the ghoulish crowd toss all the rocks they can find. Kitty and Dorothy suggest that they all go watch a scary movie. Getting a bit bored, Gorilla and Werewolf agree. Vampire and Frankenstein stare off at Tall Man, thinking of other ways to distract themselves and fulfill their need of ultimate destruction and debauchery on this night of trickery and fun. And this is the moment, folks, the very instant when our Frankenstein comes up with an idea. It's as if someone's yanked on a noodle chain with a direct connection to the right side of his brain, and on comes an itsy-bitsy light bulb. And just for clarity's sake, I'll repeat, itsy-bitsy light bulb, though by now I'm guessing you figured out that our boys here aren't the brightest, even with names like Dr. Frankenstein. Frankenstein says, "Let's light him up." "What?" all the girls shriek together in unison, as teenaged girls tend to do. Toto mimics their shock with a sharp, quick bark. Gorilla, all chump-like, says, "Tall Man." Frankenstein heartily nods. Vampire says, "Oh yeah, of course, yes," as if this was the greatest idea in the entirety of the history of all mankind. And to seal this moment in human grandiosity, Vampire boasts, "And I got a lighter." He flicks it on and holds it high for all to see. There is silence as all the ghouls acknowledge this historical moment. Even if it isn't written down in the encyclopedias of the time, it will forever be written in their minds and tomorrow's morning's newspapers. For this is the moment when everything changes. When Halloween goes from fun to, well, scary. Dead scary. "Where'd you get that?" asks Dorothy, frowning, glancing around as if the Wicked Witch of the East is about to fly straight out of the clouds and blast her with evil flying monkeys. Why, she wonders, why did Toto have to eat that jack-o'-lantern's teeth? Vampire says, "Sniped it from my brother Carl. Man, he's gonna be so pissed." The guys high-five. Dorothy says, "But what if the Van Dykes come round?" Well, if you must know, in addition to being worried about criminal arrest and going to juvie on account of Toto's wrongdoing, Dorothy doesn't like Mr. and Mrs. Van Dyke. Mr. Van Dyke once shot at Toto with a .22 when Toto followed Dorothy to school one day. Mrs. Van Dyke claims Toto was after their chickens, but Dorothy, as well as yours truly, thinks that Mr. and Mrs. are mean old hogs and were looking for an excuse to shoot at something. Kitty says, I'm not so sure, guys. I mean, I've heard some stories about Tall Man at school." Kitty is new to town. She came to live with her aunt after her mum was arrested again for driving under the influence. This time, her mum managed to rear-end a school bus full of preschool kids. The judge jailed her for a whopping 2 years. Kitty's aunt is too old to drive, which means Kitty has to walk by Tall Man day in and day out, coming and going from school. Kitty knows Tall Man watches her with its beady coal eyes. and sometimes she swears its head turns in her direction as she passes, as if smelling the scent of her bones, judging if her bones' marrow would fill its desire for a cold October's feast. I, for one, believe her, but you'll find out why later. Goodness knows Kitty was grateful when Dorothy could walk to school with her. Dorothy lives just down the road from the Van Dyke's cornfield, but lately Dorothy had to be at school early for choir practice, and Kitty was left alone with the Scarecrow and cornstalks. She says, "I think it's a real bad idea." "Me too," Dorothy nods her head, for she isn't without fear of Tall Man either. She and Kitty clutch their mittened hands together as if the power of their unity will sway the others. Vampire says, "You didn't see that when we lit the old barn at the Joneses, probably on the 4th. Yee-haw!" He and Werewolf slap another 5 at each other and missed. This isn't entirely true, but teenage boys have a way of mingling the facts with their own made-up fiction. Witch laughs. "You guys are so lame." Frankenstein, towering above all of them, a keen 6'3" at just 15 years of age, had his say. "Wait a minute now. Yes, I've heard some stories, too, about Tall Man. I heard he stalks the lone streets and alleys in town, sniffing out the marrow of children." They all turn and watch the Scarecrow. You can turn and look too if you like. See how the straw from his flannel arm gently waves in the wind. The axe head of the tomahawk chinks against the post, and if you look close enough, a reddish glare peers out from under the straw hat. Frankenstein continues, and when he finds a child he likes, he follows him. He follows him in the shadows of buildings and hides in the cover of trees, waiting and watching for the child to be alone, and when he is, Frankenstein makes a loud slurping sound in Witch's ear, and she startles and slaps at Frankenstein. "Jeez, Frankie!" Werewolf howls. Frankenstein makes the slurping sound again as if he was slurping up a whole plate of noodles. He adds, "Tall Man slurps their little bones right out of their ears." "Ew!" cackles Witch and pushes Frankenstein away. The crowd quiets once more, their focus on the Scarecrow in the center of the field. "I always wondered, why is he called Tall Man?" asks Dorothy. "I don't know," mumbles Gorilla. He scratches his fuzzy head to confirm this. Kitty, who had spent most of the beginning of the school year listening in on the gossip and conversation of girls at school, says, "I overheard girls talking in the bathroom. One of them is totally BFFs with the Van Dyke's granddaughter, Mackenzie, and Mackenzie told her the summer that Tall Man was erected, like 15 years ago, all the other farms started having problems. Like, one farmer kept seeing a dark shadow with a straw hat tremble through his cornstalks, making a sort of maze. He thought it was a player in his eyes, until one day, when he went to harvest, he followed the trail, round and round, and at the end of it, the farmer found a pile of dead dogs." Dorothy gasps. Toto barks. "And the crazy thing is, none of the dogs had bones. They weren't any cuts or incisions. The bodies just laid there like grape jelly." "Dog jelly," Vampire whispers. "And then Mackenzie said chickens began disappearing off the farms. Soon it wasn't just chickens, cats and dogs." Kitty glanced at Toto. "And then larger animals like pigs, cows, and horses. Nobody saw who or what was doing it. They were just disappearing. One day a farmer's grandkid saw a tall shadow with a straw hat outside his bedroom window. The shadow held his pet kitten and had its mouth to the kitten's ear." Dorothy squeezes up to Gorilla, and Gorilla puts his arm around her. The wind whistles through the cornstalks, adding dimension to Kitty's tale. Kitty wraps her arms around herself. "The kitten laid limp in the shadow's hands, and the shadow, glancing up, saw he was caught. He opened his stitched mouth and screamed at the little boy, and it sounded like the cry of 1,000 souls being tortured." "Oh," said Witch. She gulped loud enough for all of them to hear her. Kitty turns to her. "The little boy called the shadow Tall Man and claimed it was the Scarecrow from the Van Dyke's cornfield." "Geez, I've never heard that before," said Werewolf, his howling forgotten. Kitty swallows hard. "And that's not the worst of it. Soon after, the little boy disappeared. while riding his trike down his grandparents' very own driveway. Later, they found his body in the Van Dyke's cornfield at the very pole of Tall Man, all his bones gone. I don't have to tell you that after Kitty's story, all the kids glanced nervously at each other, then at the cornfield and the straw creature hanging on the pole. I imagined you and I would do the same thing. Hot doggy, I tell you what, something has changed in the moments between the rock-throwing and the storytelling. Dread plum fills the air like maggots on a dead pig's snout. Vampire fiddles with his brother's lighter, flicking it on and off, and oddly enough, it is the only sound in the night, and it echoes and echoes like a lone voice in an empty tunnel. Witch breaks the silence. OMG, we totally have to burn it, you know. The scarecrow, just like in the old days. Burn the beast, burn the beast. Dorothy sneers at Witch. I think it's burn the witch. Shut up, cackles Witch. Burn the beast. Burn the beast, burn the beast, the boys chant. Gorilla beat his chest. Werewolf howls, and the hunt is on. The boys dash, one after the other, whooping and hollering into the cornstalks. Toto, wanting to join in the fun, leaps out of Dorothy's basket, yelping and barking, giving chase to the ghouls racing into the night. Toto, bad dog, no, says Dorothy, and she feels tears on the verge of bursting the dam. The stalks split wide like a mouth opening to eat them, and suddenly the ghouls and dog vanish. Witch laughs and dances on the road. She swings her pillowcase of candy above her head, singing, Ding dong, the beast is dead, the wicked beast is dead. She pauses. I'm totally going to take a selfie with Tall Man burning in the background. Who's with me? She turns to the other girls. Kitty folds her arms. Yeah, that'll make it easy for the police to arrest you. Witch says, Oh no, they so wouldn't, would they? She turns to Dorothy. Dorothy shrugs, not hearing the question, too worried about her little doggy. Toto, come back to me, Toto. Where's the Tin Man when you need him, huh? Witch cackles her wicked little laugh, then puts her hands on her hips. You girls are so wimpy. I don't even know why we hang out with you. If you don't go into that field with me right now, consider yourselves out of the group. She smacks gum and looks at her nails. What do you say? Neither Kitty nor Dorothy make a move towards the field, nor do they say a word. I'd hope you wouldn't either. Witch is one mean egg, and bullying is her game. Witch stamps her foot. That's it, I'm going out there by myself. Don't want to hang with you losers. Kitty gulps, eyeing Tall Man. She swears his head has moved to the right, in the direction the boys were charging in from. Don't go, she moans at Witch. But it's too late. Witch has already sauntered out into the field. The stalks fold her in the darkness. Witch calls, Vampire! Gorilla! Wait for me! Gorilla yells, Hey, that's Witch! Wait up for Witch! Dorothy and Kitty hold hands again. I don't like this, says Kitty. Dorothy shakes her head. Me neither. Toto! He'll come back. Kitty squeezes her hand reassuringly, more reassuringly than she actually feels. Where is he? Dorothy whispers. A sudden quiet quality shivers in her voice. Who? Toto? Kitty scans the field for the little dog. Tall Man. He's not there. Kitty gasps. The pole stands all by its lone bare self, where Tall Man used to hang. Did they take him down? No, Dorothy says. I don't think so. They listen and can still hear the crowd walking through the rows, Witch and Gorilla playing Marco Polo to find each other. A scream pierces the still night, and then another, and another. Kitty and Dorothy hug each other. That's Witch. I know, Kitty says. We need to go to your house. It's closest. The boys call, Witch, Witch, where are you? Another high steepled scream answers back, but this time it's fainter, and it fades like a candle burning out. We're coming, yell the boys. Granddaddy! Kitty's face is pale as a ghost, her eyes big black quarters, and her kitty ears lop over to the side. We need to go now. No, I can't leave Toto. Dorothy takes a deep breath, not realizing she drops the basket she's been carrying her doggy in and belts out, "Toto!" Kitty covers Dorothy's ruby-red lips with her mittens. "Shh, you idiot! Now he knows where we are." She points at the field. In the distance, stalks split in half as a tall shadow with a straw hat blazes through towards the road, his tomahawk raised and bobbing through the leaves. "I'm not leaving Toto." The girls split, their hands coming apart. Kitty turns and races down the midnight road, praying she doesn't fall as she runs full speed towards Dorothy's house. She feels her feet are like cement blocks, and she's running in slow motion, the endless cornfield matching her footfall for footfall. Dorothy watches her for 1 second, hesitates, then turns and dives into the cornstalks. "Toto, Toto, come to me!" A bark greets Dorothy, and she runs further into the field. The night whips out another strangled cry, only this one is long and torturous, ending with a loud crunch at the end of it. We can only guess what that crunch is. Kitty pauses in her running to look behind her. She hears Frankenstein's voice. "Is that witch?" Werewolf's voice above the others yell, "She's back that way towards the road." "Which way's the road?" yells back another. Kitty knows, as you and I do. The last scream wasn't witch. It was Dorothy. Kitty searches the cornfield for the shadow with the hat, but didn't see it this time. She turns and runs again. Hot tears burned Kitty's wind-chapped cheeks, and she knows that going out with her new friends was a bad idea, possibly the worst idea of this century. She should have gone to the Halloween party with her 7-year-old great-niece Rosie. Rosie is her aunt's great-grandchild. Rosie had begged and begged her to go to the kiddie Halloween party, but no. Kitty wanted to go out with her new friends, her cool pals from school. If only she'd stayed with Rosie, she'd be at home now, safe and warm, eating popcorn and watching a scary Disney movie with her little niece. A rustle of leaves snapped Kitty out of her haphazard running daze and pulls her attention to the cornfield. If you peer closely, boys and girls, something sprints silently, ghostly, just inside the corn rows, racing beside Kitty at her exact speed. To Kitty's horror and ours, she spots a straw hat on its head and a tomahawk whacking the air beside it. Turn your focus back to the midnight road and up ahead, and you'll spot a house, Dorothy's house, with warm lights on and her family's minivan heating up the frosty night air. And looky there, there's Dorothy's mum and pop chatting outside. They're admiring their family's hoard of lined-up jack-o'-lanterns and how pretty they look on All Hallows' Eve. And just so you know, they do look pretty. Sinister pretty. The carved pumpkins all smile with sharp rows of teeth, eyes slanted devilishly. It's as if the pumpkins keep an inside joke, one only they know. But what the jack-o'-lanterns don't know is that Kitty knows what they know, and so do you and I. "Help!" Kitty shrieks. She can't help but turn and look at the long shadow racing beside her. It's closer now, almost out of the cornfield. Every so often a leaf crushes under its shadow feet, leaving split stalks in its wake. "Help!" Kitty screams again. This time Dorothy's parents turn towards the cornfields. They point towards her, and she hears Dorothy's mum say, "Oh my, is she running? Is she the one screaming? Call 911! But Dorothy's dad is already jogging towards Kitty with a flashlight. Kitty throws herself towards Dorothy's dad, willing her body to enter the safety of the soft flashlight and human connection. A whisper of leaves beside her, and the shadow is there. Out of the corner of Kitty's eyes, she sees the fancy tomahawk. It is raised. She won't look at Tall Man, refuses to. She just keeps running, dashing to one side of the street, then the other. She doesn't have far to go now, but before we know it, she feels the scratch of straw against her arms. She smells the scent of rotted flesh, hears crunching teeth. Diamond red eyes scorch her skin, and she is lifted into the air and is now flying towards the cornfield in the clutches of Tall Man's shadowy arms. His flashlight in hand, car key held like a dagger, Dorothy's dad races along the pavement and dives into the cornfield after the tall shadow carrying Kitty. But you and I know a car key ain't going to do lickety-split for the likes of Kitty. No, siree, and as it is, between the rows of corn, Dorothy's dad hears a wet, sickly sound like worms being sucked through a straw. He hears it, a crunch, crunch. He blazes the corn rows one by one with his flashlight. Looks as if he's darn well set the whole field afire, and finally his flashlight beam finds what we dread most. Something sharp and shiny raises over a dark shadow's head. It's swinging now, swinging down hard and fast. Thunk! I think you know what that is. So does Dorothy's dad, and he faints right there in the cornfield. But don't you worry about him. His flashlight is bright as a North Star. Plus, he is a grown-up. Ghouls and ghosts and scarecrows don't want nothing to do with grown-ups because they lack imagination. Of course, I think you'd agree heartily with me right now that Dorothy's dad just got a good dose of it. We all did. Little series of barks yap down the road as Toto leads the ghoulish crowd of boys. Werewolf, who was no longer howling. Vampire, who long ago dropped his lighter. Gorilla, who appears to be running on his knuckles. And finally, Frankenstein, whose eyes say for the first time he realizes his own existence. He's alive! Dr. Frankenstein, really alive. Dorothy's mum meets the dog and the boys round about the place where Kitty disappeared. Sure enough, just a ways into the cornfield, they follow the flashlight beam and discover Dorothy's dad still passed out. When he wakes up, he doesn't remember a thing except running into the cornfields after a tall, dark shadow. But you and I remember, don't we, folks? Sure we do. They search the corn rows and call for the girls until the police show up. A search party is soon underway, including Mr. and Mrs. Van Dyke, and by dawn, the corn rows are stomped into dirt and nothing is left in the field but a scarecrow hanging on a pole. No one but the boys turn a leery eye toward the tall man, and not even they notice the fresh bloodstains on the edge of the tomahawk. But I'm sure you noticed. You and I both know whose blood it is too, and we both know who done it. Next spring, when Mr. Van Dyke goes to sow his fields, he finds a curious thing. A single hand flops out of the ground, cold and wiggly as jelly. Instead of causing a brouhaha with the locals, he figures the body has been laid to rest, and laid to rest it should stay. So he shovels some dirt over the hand, and keeps it all to himself, as small town folk tend to do. And so know this, boys and girls, and let this be a lesson to you. When the moon is high, and October is in full bloom, beware, ye children of the night. Mind the cornfields cornering the outside of your towns and villages. For Tall Man is only one of many, and they are hungry, very hungry indeed.
Mav told us she wrote this story for her children last Halloween. She read it to them at midnight, with the lights turned down low. And afterwards, it was very, very quiet in the house. She would also like to warn the children of the world to stay away from cornfields and old farmhouses on All Hallows Eve. And after this story, I know I'll be taking her advice. Join us next week for the conclusion to our End of the World month, with a classic tale by the godfather of horror and the king of the apocalypse, old Howard Philip Lovecraft himself. If you've enjoyed this story, then please lend a hand in supporting podcast fiction. Leave us and this story a review on iTunes or our Facebook page, and share it with others. We're on Twitter as well, at Cast of Wonders. And please consider making a donation to the show via the PayPal links on our site. 100% of our donations go to purchase stories and cover our bandwidth costs. Every bit helps, and you have our heartfelt thanks as always for helping us to keep bringing you the best in young adult audio fiction week after week. Cast of Wonders is a production of Wolfsbane Publishing and is brought to you by the creative team of Barry J. Northern, our publisher and artist, Alan Sale, our audio producer, and I remain as always your humble editor and host, Marguerite Kenner. Our episodes are released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. You may share it, but don't change it. Our theme, Appeal to Heavens, is by Alexi Nov from musicalley.com. Thanks for listening.